Back in the day when you played COD Zombies with either your friends or with randoms online, there was always that one area where you would always tell people not to go to because you knew they were going to go down. I must say so myself that there are some spots in COD Zombies where you can beg your teammates not to go, and sometimes they just gravitate towards them like a bug going to a light. Next thing you know, they are down and you're going to have to revive their crazy selves, and you told them not to go in that area, but they disobeyed you anyway. Hello all, I'm Actual Doctor, and today we're going to be guessing the areas on COD Zombies maps that you just go down a lot in because they are tricky areas and you do everything in your possibility and power to avoid these spots. These areas could just be tricky transitions, or maybe the zombie spawns are just absolutely whack, so let's dive into them one map at a time. Alright, first up we have Nocturne Totem, which is, arguably one of the hardest COD Zombies maps of all time because it's just so bare bones and that's pretty much it. I remember when Noct came out for the very first time in 2009, there were so many death areas on this map because it was challenging. I mean, there's not that much to it. But if I actually had to sit down, get out my pencil and paper, and write down the areas where people die most, it's actually going to be in the spawn room on higher rounds. Like, there's zero reason to be in the spawn room if you're playing with 4 players on high rounds. There's so many areas where the zombies can just swarm on you, and unless you're running a train and you actually have the skill to pull that off, then just probably stay out of the spawn area. I will say, if I'm actually trying to revive a teammate, I think the worst place somebody can possibly get down is definitely like on top of the stairs or at the bottom of the stairs by the mystery box. Like, that is such a hard spot to pull off a res. If I'm being brutally honest though, any area in Nocturne Totem is going to be sketchy, and anytime you have to revive someone, it's going to be a challenge, so just kind of buckle up. I mean, that's the beauty of Nocturne Totem, and also the curse with it. Additionally, some players will actually go down outside of like the massive camping room where the grenades are because they see a power up, they decide to go run and grab it, and next thing you know, they kill themselves because they try to grab that power up. I think we can safely say that Noct is loaded with kill spots, and we can move on to the next map. Now with Verrucht, things are very similar to Nocturne Totem in a sense that there's a lot of really sketchy areas within this map. Verrucht without a doubt is one of the hardest zombies maps of all time because it's just so claustrophobic and crammed, and you'd think it's just a little bit bigger than Noct, things will be okay, but it's not really that story. Now I know there is a massive difference between playing with other people and playing solo, but let's just be fun and pretend like we're playing with randoms here. The areas that I see players getting stuck most at are probably the stairs, like right above the spawn room, like past Jug. Like, that area can be really sketchy, and especially if you're down kind of by Jug, people tend to go down there a lot too. A lot of people really want to go grab Jug, and they end up doing so, but in that time, there's a lot of different areas where zombies can come and creep up and get you, so just have caution when you're going to get Juggernog. I also want to acknowledge that the staircase right by Mule Kick can be very sketchy, and that room just above it, there's just a lot of different areas in which zombies can come get you at, and it's just really tight and compact. Also keep in mind that this is Verrucht. Everything is going to be tight and compact, but you know what? Some areas there's just different weird spawns and pathings where zombies can just really get you. And then one last honorable mention, because I have seen some people go down this way, and that is definitely the little barrier that is below the power room. For some reason, players will go down to address a zombie at the window barrier down there, but they won't realize that other zombies have seeped through the power room and they actually trap them down on that stairwell. So yeah, I'm starting to see a repeated pattern here. Just stay away from stairs in Verrucht, okay? Going on over to Shinonuma, we've actually kind of got an interesting one here. Shinonuma was definitely one of the first maps that introduced like large based open map training, which, I'm very thankful for. At the same time, there is a duality with trying to run a good train. A lot of people like to train in the comm room. It's a very popular spot to run. Like, a lot of people can just run around, shoot their Wonder Wap, and fly through the rounds on World at War at least, but if we're playing Shinonuma on Black Ops 1, it's kind of a different story. An area that players struggle is definitely if you're running that comm room and you actually have to pass like that little kind of shack area kind of going back towards the main hut. People can get trapped there if they're not careful. You have to be really smart and strategic about when you decide to kill your zombies and want more of them to spawn in, because if you do it in a weird spot, the next thing you know, some zombies are going to interrupt your train and trap you. Crazy area within Shinonuma to actually navigate is definitely the doctor's quarters swamp area. It's very challenging. I know in the gameplay here I'm on a much lower round, but if you actually kick it up a gear and go to a higher round and you're bouncing around in that swamp, it can actually get you killed. So if you really have to cross that swamp, do so with caution. Alright, let's go to Derice, arguably one of the best zombie maps of all time for Call of Duty Zombies, and I know there is one area on Derice for sure you do not want to be caught in when the round is started, and that is the infamous Juggernog hallway. Like, you want to stay clear of this area when the round is starting because there are just so many death traps that that you could run into. I don't mess with this hallway on purpose because you have 2 windows that are by Jug, and then you have awkward zombies that will sprint up through the spiral staircase, which is also another death trap, and they will be coming across the electric bridge. So you know what? You are essentially pinned if you chill here. Out of the first 3 maps that we've went over, there's some pretty clear areas where, you know, you just want to stay away from. Derice, this is the one that is definitely 10 out of 10. Do not stand here. This one, I don't blink an eye. I'm out of that area immediately. So pro tip, stay out of that area. Get your Jug and get out. Unless you're on Black Ops 3's The Giant, then you just pray to God that Mule Kick spawns there and Jug is in a very nice spot. I gotta say, when Keynote or Toten released for Black Ops 1, players were at awe because this map was kind of cool. It was relatively basic, super iconic, and there were a lot of areas where people just wanted to pitch a tent and just chill out. But in reality, I know this one is kind of vague because not a lot of people will actually chill out on the sides of the map. So it's literally people will just chill in the spawn room, or they'll chill on the stage, or just somewhere like in the Jug corner, or maybe the alley if they keep a door closed. Honestly, Kino's kill spots depend on what doors you keep open and what doors you keep closed. But if I actually had to really advise my teammates to stay out of a certain area, it's definitely got to be the dressing room in between the stage and the MP40 room. Like, this area is very dangerous. Not only does it have really tight zombie spawns, it has like a falling roof spawn where a zombie will fall from the ceiling, and on top of that, you can get Nova 6 crawlers crawling from the MP40 room and the backstage. If you thought that was sketchy enough, even the boxes knock at you because someone's trapped in those, and I don't know, I just stay out of this room and people go down in here because it's just way too busy and hectic. I do have to give an honorable mention though, I hate it when people go down in front of the stage because there's so many zombie spawns, you really actually have to hoard up everything before you actually revive your teammate. So shout out to you if you are actually a smart player, hoard up your zombies, run them away, and then you go run and revive your teammate like a smart person, because you know that's what I would do. But getting back on track here, yeah, stay away from that dressing room. I hate that room, and even the adjacent room, which would be like kind of up in that room above the alleyway, kind of backstage. I'm not a big fan of that one either, where the 115 rock is. All right, let's go to 5, which is the map where you can actually listen to JFK have really super funny quotes, and apparently he thinks Quick Revive is super fishy. But I mean, don't all our characters think Quick Revive tastes fishy? I don't know, maybe I'm crazy or something. Anyway, regardless of playing solo or with people, you do not want to be on the 3rd floor labs in the middle of a round on 5. The laboratories on level 3 on 5 are an absolute nightmare, and you do not want to get stuck down here. Hell, even there are a bunch of Nova gas crawlers down here, so just avoid this area. Also, if you're jumping through the teleporters, and I don't have a clip of this on screen just because it's so rare to happen, but if you do jump through a teleporter at the time of a zombie, it can actually end your game and kill you. The laboratories are so claustrophobic, and I mean, even if you go and run around, it's still tight, it's dark, and I mean, you're just trying to run to get to a teleporter and get the heck out of there. You have been warned. Make sure to get out of the laboratories and go to the 2nd floor, which is the war room, and just hang around the DEFCON switches, because I mean, that's the best place to go and run on 5. Ascension is by far the easiest map in Black Ops 1. It's kind of not even close because there's a bunch of training spots, you have the thunder gun, and you can go on forever. But I gotta say, there's not too many death areas on Ascension, apart from like the main buildings where the power switch is at, apart swinging on over to like Speed Cola. Like, those areas are really sketchy because they're just really claustrophobic and tight. But if I were to pick on one single area and focus on it, especially as a solo player, and heck, even if you're playing with other people and they're not around you, stay clear of the pack-a-punch room. I would say it's really hard to pack-a-punch mid-round because you have 2 windows to your side and those zombies can come and swipe you from there, or if you're not paying attention, they'll just flat out come from the front and they will keep coming and coming. If you have people with you, this spot, it's kind of okay. It reminds me of the Jug hallway in Derice, but not as extreme. But if you have some people with you, it's totally fine. But if you're solo, just use the pack-a-punch with caution. I kind of thought a little bit about the areas outside of stamina up, but I don't know. I don't really go down that much over there, but I mean, I'm sure people do. It's just, it depends on what kind of a player you are. Call of the Dead is arguably one of the most iconic zombies maps of all time because it's fun cast and just setting overall. It is a really challenging map at some points in times because you have George Romero breathing down your neck all of the time, and you have to decide if you want to stay in one place, eloquently train around him or decide to run off to a different area. And when George comes your way and you are forced to run around, you actually bump into a lot of hill zones on Call of the Dead. If you're on a round that's past round 10, you're probably going to want to avoid the ship and not try to stick around it too. The ship is really tricky because it's just tight. There's a lot of really tight areas and you have to maneuver your way around, so just be with caution when you are going throughout the ship. I've had a lot of people go down over there. Even the lighthouse can be exceptionally tricky because once again, it is tight and there's a lot of window barriers around the lighthouse. However, if I were to break down this map and analyze the most killable area where I swear I see players go down at, it's actually an area that you might be surprised of. The little building house that is connected to the lighthouse, which actually houses PhD, is where, you know, there's like the closet where Richthofen and Dempsey and Takeo and Nikolai are trapped in. Yeah, that area is kind of a kill trap. I've witnessed a lot of players go down in that room when they're trying to buy PhD flopper, or even above on the deck where the mystery box sometimes spawns. Like that area, it's actually kind of a death trap. I think it's really tight and there are a bunch of zombies that spawn up inside that house and they will run upward towards the mystery box spawn, and then you even have zombies running from the cave and that one barrier that you see in the cutscene. On top of this, if you actually have the front door of the lighthouse open, the zombies will actually pour from there too, so you don't really want to get stuck on top of that deck area where that whole intro cutscene cinematic takes place, because it can be really challenging. I think I might need some help with Call of the Dead because there's a lot of definite kill areas on this map, so you know what, drop it down in the comment section down below what you think a kill spot in Call of the Dead is. And speaking of a ton of kill spots and bad areas, let's go to Shangri-La, because literally that's all this map is. Shangri-La might be one of the biggest nuisances or nightmares ever, and I mean there are a few areas on Shang that just make me say, yeah, I'm not gonna be here when the round starts. I gotta dip from here. For me, my number one spot is definitely the waterfall. Like, I don't know why anyone in their right mind would be camping in the waterfall area where, you know, you can press the brick button and it makes the waterfall go crazy. The zombie ground spawns are so awkward here, and on top of that, there's even a barrier in the corner by the mystery box. Like, holy cow, this area is a death trap. You better have like a JGB or something super good, because if you don't, yeah, you're gonna go down in that waterfall area for sure. Also, I've seen a ton of people go down at the other mystery box location, which is where like the water slide spits out at. That area is kind of a good death trap area too. A lot of people have gone down there thinking they can hold the fort down there. But if I were to play the obvious and safe game, yeah, of course, stay away from the spikes outside the spawn rooms, and also make sure to stay out of the mud pit. Like, come on. Shangri-La is just filled with death traps, I'm not gonna lie. Shang is one of those maps where you just want to have like a nice pillow to lay your head down when you go to sleep at night, but instead you got like this dirty 1940s blanket that was been left over from your closet, so that's what you have to go with. It can be an uncomfortable map, that is what I'm trying to say here. But anyway, let's move on, of course. Now, I gotta say, I love Moon, and there's a lot of weird transitioning spots in Moon, but I mean, if I had to put my finger on it, there's a few areas that I will stay out of as soon as the round starts automatically. My number one spot, zero hesitation, is definitely the laboratories, because you have the Nova 6 crawlers, and this time they also teleport on you, and there's just so many different spawns in the labs, and it just makes me want to stay away from them. I don't know how many people out there are like, yeah, it's round 20, like, let's go to the labs, everybody. Nope, you are going to the fire dome, you're running outside a mule kick, maybe you're going to the power room, I don't know, you just want to stay away from the labs. Like, who wants to hang out in the laboratories with all those Nova 6 crawlers that teleport? It is not I. An honorable mention goes out to Tunnel 6 for a few reasons. And no, I swear, it's not because I have beef with this tunnel, because the excavator just takes forever to go so I can do the Easter egg. It's not for that reason, but I mean, they may be a little bit. As aesthetically cool looking as Tunnel 6 is, it is actually kind of a trap house, and it's also pretty dark, so you know what, I really don't want to spend my time in Tunnel 6. There's a lot of ceiling spawns in that place, so I'm booking it and getting out of there. Also, I have seen some people actually go down quite a few times just from the transition zones of where you can actually pick up a spacesuit at with like the open and closing doors. Like, that actually happens. There is no other feeling in the world than opening up those sliding doors on Moon and seeing the astronaut zombie just chilling there, ready to grab you and take away one of your perks. I have screamed a few times, I'm not gonna lie. But hey, what can you do? That is Moon for you. Oh my gosh, it's transit, guys. Like, there's not that many areas for you to die at. No fog fire denizens or something to try to kill you. Well, we're actually going to analyze something different here. Excluding the cornfield and where you actually did the Easter egg for Tower of Babel, I actually think that the power station and going inside that can kind of be a death trap here and there. Transit actually has a few buildings here and there that are super tight, so you have to be careful when you're navigating them, and the power station is definitely one of those buildings, especially especially after you turn on the power and you're running through the areas where you have to make the jumps. In my mind, I wish the power station was a lot bigger. It would have made for a really cool survival map, but we just basically got 2 little mini buildings and that was it. But apart from that, I do think this area is pretty sketchy sometimes. Other sketchy areas include the houses on farm. Like, you have to be really careful when you're navigating these houses because zombies can come in through hordes, they can jump up on things, and you just have to be very cautious. I don't really have footage of this on screen, but the Pack-a-Punch hallway underneath town and the bank, like that place can actually be pretty sketchy as well. I will say the majority of transit is relatively open, so I mean, you actually have a lot of wiggle room to run around and play. So, you know, transit's not too crazy and doesn't have any like game-breaking death barriers, but if you are going to go into like some of the smaller houses or buildings down by, you just have to be careful. Now, Nuketown Zombies is kind of really interesting because this whole map is pretty much a challenge, but I mean, there is one area that, you know, I advise players not to go to. Okay, I lied. There are 3 areas that I do not want you to go to, or you probably shouldn't go to because you're definitely going to die. The first 1 and 2 are definitely the bedrooms. I think the bedrooms are really tricky because zombies can jump up through the window, like the perfect camping spot for multiplayer. Yeah, just don't go up there. Zombies will rush you, you'll die instantly. So that's areas 1 and 2. But the biggest area by far is the garage on the greenhouse, when you actually have to crawl under the garage, like, and you're just pinned in that area. It is so sketchy. I wonder if people actually do challenge videos by showing in that garage, because I think they might. Like, that is a really sketchy area. Honestly, everywhere you go in Nuketown is going to be sketchy, so just play with caution because, yep, zombies come from every angle on this map. Now, Die Rise is like Shangri-La. It's trying to actively kill you through the verticality and just tightness of the map. And with a big plot twist, we are actually not including an area that includes verticality. I know, shocker, especially on Die Rise. But to me, there is one area that I think even if you are kind of a skilled player, it's going to take some time to practice navigating. And oh yes, I am talking about the maze. The maze in Die Rise is just one of those things where, you know, you're just kind of walking around just with your head stumbled and cut off, and there's a bunch of zombies chasing you and coming from different rooms. Unless you have a Sliquifier or a Papped AN94 with double tap, this area is going to be pretty tricky to navigate and survive in. In the earlier rounds, it's a lot more doable, but the thing that makes this area so tricky is if you want to leave and escape it, you actually have to be patient for an elevator to come down and pick you up. For that reason, you will not find me or hopefully my teammates dead near that maze because I don't want to die. I don't want to be known as a die riser and die in the maze. Like, what? If you're asking me, I would much rather go down and die on an area where I can be on the rooftop enjoying Die Rise's beautiful skybox. But seriously, the maze and the power room and all that stuff, I don't really like to mess with that. But in all seriousness, could you actually imagine a grief mode being held down in that maze on Die Rise? That would be so cool. Now, Mob of the Dead is definitely my favorite map of all time, and I know that's just my bias, but you know, I gotta explore that a little bit. But I gotta say, there are some areas in Call of the Dead that I will not step in because I know I'm gonna die, or I know my teammates might struggle to survive. So you know what, let's list those off now. First of all, I think the infirmary is a complete death trap. I try to avoid the infirmary as much as possible, and on top of that, you get the creepy infirmary music, which is also really cool, by the way. But nope, I like to avoid that area completely. It just kind of sucks because you really have to navigate through that area if you are going to go to the roof, so I like to spend as less time as possible there. Another really crazy area, and I know this sounds really basic, but it's just the main cell block. Like the cell block area where you actually have the giant massive layers and levels that lead right to the warden's office. Like, dude, that area is awful. You never want to be stuck in that area, and if you are, you better be running and sprinting because zombies will spawn very fast from the warden's office and they spawn in front of you. So just take your time and get out of there. And finally, I never mess with the tunnels underground, the Alcatraz Island on Mob of the Dead, like especially the Citadel tunnel where you actually have to do the code to get the rigging for the plane. Like, I don't mess with that area at all. But if I'm being fair, there are actually a bunch of areas where you can die on Mob of the Dead just because it's really tight. It's almost like Verrucht, but way bigger. There's a bunch of really tight areas, so you have to be very careful when you're navigating throughout the map. Now, Buried is an interesting one because if you actually think about it, Buried is one of the easiest maps in BO2, and it's because it's got powerful weapons like the Paralyzer and the Pack-a-Punch AN94, so you don't really have to worry that much. And as a matter of fact, the LSAT is in the map too, so I mean, let's just make the game super easy, and on top of that, you do have Vulture Aid, so you can hide from all the zombies. But if you are not careful, there actually are a few areas in Buried where you just don't want to be because you're probably going to get overwhelmed and die. I actually think it is a really cool challenge, and if you can camp above the balcony in the church, because the church in its own is just like, I don't know of why people would hang out in the church. It's just so crowded, and there's some weird window spawns there for zombies to get to you. And they also spawn from the ceiling, so that's also something to take note of. But a lot of people actually just go down on the basic drag when you are walking past the candy store to the saloon, all the way trying to get to the Juggernog area. Like, that place can actually be kind of sketchy. There are a ton of ground spawns in that area, so you can get tripped up, and on top of that, zombies are running out of the stores, so you just have to be very careful. But one area you do not want to be in when a round starts is definitely that secret hidden tunnel that connects the bank all the way to the general store. Like, you do not want to be underground in this tunnel when the round starts, because you're definitely gonna eat it. Well, actually, the zombies would eat you there. I think that's the proper thing I wanted to say. If I were to elevate it one more notch and go to a bigger area of the map, obviously the maze is a no-go for me. I'm trying to get out of the maze as fast as I can, but the maze in the center is actually a pretty decent place where if you're skilled enough, you can actually train. But yeah, I just hate running around the maze. Like, that can actually be pretty sketchy too. Now, Origins has a lot of really sketchy areas to it. I mean, if I'm thinking about the generators, I don't like to go back by generator 6 all the way behind the church. It's just a really weird area that you can get trapped in. Also, anytime you're leaving the mound or you are leaving the gramophone area where you're going to the tunnels, like the lightning tunnel, fire, ice, wind tunnels, those can be kind of sketchy too if you're not careful. But if I were to have to give the one area in Origins that I would advise any player, whether you are good or bad, to avoid, it is definitely the trenches on the way to generator 3. I cannot stand the area by the trip mines or semtexes, depending if you're playing BO2 or BO3. This area is a death trap. The zombies spawn in so fast within the trenches that it is easy to get a player overwhelmed and killed. Especially if you get a Panzer Soldat with you within the trenches, you are definitely running your butt off to get out of there. And there is a reason there is the phrase, you are being thrown into the trenches. You will see me run as fast as possible to get out of the trenches, especially the one by Gen 3. I cannot stand that area. I've seen so many people go down there. I've gone down there. It's ruined some of my good high rounding runs. Just please promise actual doctor that you won't get caught up in that area, because I will pray for you when you are there. Okay, now we have to talk about Shadows of Evil, because Shadows of Evil actually has some areas that could be pretty, well, yucky. I'm gonna get these places out of the way first and just say that pretty much 3 out of the 4 ritual sites are kind of really dangerous to be at, especially on high rounds. Players honestly have zero reason to be training in Nero's Lair. I mean, that's just a really weird area on top of that. And then the Ruby Rabbit can be kind of tricky to navigate a little bit if you're not careful. But if I'm being really honest here, the boxing gym is an absolute nightmare. There are so many fast spawning zombies in the boxing gym, and even leaving the boxing gym is a challenge of its own. Okay, but if I'm really being honest here, which I know I'm kind of going back on my honesty, the spawn room is actually kind of hectic too. That little stretch when you're going up the stairs and going to Nero's Lair, like if you're on a high round, you actually have to be very careful. But here's the thing, Black Ops 3 is kind of an easy game sometimes. You have a lot more overpowered weapons that can actually get you through places, because pretty much a lot of the box guns Pack-a-Punched are pretty strong, and you have the Apothecant Servant plus little Arnie's, and if you can actually make that stuff work, the transition zones don't become as frightening. But I gotta say, if you're not playing the BO3 system, going with the Gobblegums, and you actually have a pretty bad gun and you're in a transition zone, it actually might be kind of hard to navigate some of these areas. But I don't know, I guess that's just Black Ops 3 in a nutshell. Alright, let's go to Rise and Draw Hub, because there's a few areas on this map that I actually really want to highlight, but apart from that, this map is actually not too crazy. Well, it always seems that way, because once again, BO3's got some really overpowered weapons to get you out of some sticky situations. Oh, and Gobblegums. I actually think the little pathway leading up to the castle on the right side of spawn is actually a really tricky area, especially when you're doing the Easter egg and you actually have to put the talisman on the side. This area can mess some people up. I know it's a little bit more of an open area, but zombies just run really fast, and I think that it's really important to keep an eye on whatever is happening, because you know, they can sneak up and get you. You have to be especially careful when you're navigating the ramparts on Rise and Draha, because you know, those are really tight corridors, and once again, zombies, they actually spawn really quick on this map. The one rampart that I think in my mind is where you're actually shooting the pyres for the Stormbow upgrade step, and you're just trying to shoot the arrows, and there's always some zombies that are climbing over the ramparts or coming up from the back, and it's just really hard to keep them all in line. And for some reason, which I do know the reason why, a lot of people have gone down in the rocket testing area, because Gee, I wonder if a rocket actually likes to go off and actually kills your teammates, or you sometimes. Once again, I know there's some really overpowered features in BO3 that can get you out of some really tough situations, but at the end of the day, if you're not careful, you can get cornered in a lot of these tight areas under Eisendrache. And speaking of tight areas, let's talk about Zetsubo no Shima, because there are a few in this one. Now, I could actually go into a long laundry list of places on Zetsubo no Shima that I think are really sketchy, but there is one area that I'm just going to focus on and just stick to this one and only. The place that I'm talking about is the area that is definitely the underwater zone where you have to swim. And I know there are two. There is the one in the power room, and there is the long tunnel where Mule Cook's at, and you have to go grab the plant. Also, you can get a pack-a-punch part there, so yeah, that's cool. If I'm being brutally honest, swimming and zombies don't really mix. There's just something about it. I don't know what it is. You will not catch me dead underwater with zombies coming at me. Like, literally, who actually likes to chill underwater when the zombies are coming at you? Like, it's kind of cool, but at the same time, you're probably gonna die. It's just so eerie. It almost reminds me of Moon, how they were trying to make the zombies like really slow and bouncy, but when you're underwater, it's tight corridors, but you also like actually have to stop to breathe, so that's a thing. Apart from the underwater areas in Zetsubo no Shima, what areas just absolutely sketch you out? Gorod Krovi is also kind of similar to Zetsubo no Shima in the sense that there's a lot of really tight areas that I just don't really like traversing through, especially with all the features within Black Ops 3. There's a lot of really easy things that you can do to make sure that you survive, but Gorod Krovi, it's kind of tricky because it's really tight. I'm sure you guys all have your different areas in Gorod that you like to avoid, and I must say that one of the areas that I don't really like to be in at the start of a round is definitely the spawn room. You really don't have any business going back to the spawn room unless you're kind of going to get your trials completed and just get your rewards, but apart from that, this area is kind of a nightmare. This area is really sketchy because it has the dragon, and the dragon will breathe some fire, and on top of that, there's just some other tight areas to the right, or depending on what side you're on, the left, where the underground water bunker's at, and that area is really sketchy. I actually did a first stream challenge with Derpy one time, and I died in the underground water area because a mangler spawned in, trapped me, and it was just game over for me. So you know what? Yeah, honestly, any area where the dragon comes and breathes fire, it forces you to actually go to tighter areas of the map, and I think that's one reason why Gorod is so tricky. And I gotta say, there are a multitude of reasons why Gorod is kind of hard, but apart from that, I must say there are some really tight areas within this map. Revelations is one of those maps where you're like, how could you possibly go down? You can have a thunder gun, the Ragnaroks, literally the Apothicon Servant, like what gives? What are the tight areas on this map? Well, for starters, if you were paying attention twice during this video, you know that the Origins trenches are back, and indeed the spawn room from Shangri-La, so you know what? Avoid those places, please. Also previously mentioned within the video, Verrucht is back, and you remember Verrucht, it's actually a really tight corridor nightmare. If the community wanted to be honest on this one, there's actually not really crazy kill spots on this map if you have the Apothicon Servant, because it essentially just negates everything, and even with the Thunder Gun or with the Ragnaroks, I mean, you take your pick. The kill spots on Revelations get completely downplayed if you don't have the appropriate wonder weapon to take out zombies, but keep in mind, I think everybody can get Ragnaroks as the specialist weapons anyway, so you should have no reason to actually fear when you are transitioning within this map. But assuming you don't have any wonder weapons and it's kind of somewhat of a higher round, then you know what? Pass with caution when you are in Verrucht, Origins, or Shangri-La, and sometimes even Eisendrache because there are some fast spawns on the ground. And okay, I'd be crazy if I didn't throw a bone to Nocturne Toten because, yep, Nocturne Toten can be pretty sketchy too. If you go down in easy areas, that's totally okay. It doesn't mean you're dumb, or does it? And if you think you're dumb, here's the COD Zombies dummy test right over here.